So today on Dave's Great Ideas, we're going to take out the useless water heater that I never use in my Roadtrek 190, and we're going to replace it with a barbecue. So here we have our water heater. Now, I've never used this water heater, but it does work. I have tested it. We've got our propane gas inlet here. That's going to feed the barbecue. We got this space, which is fairly big. It's 12 inches by 12 inches, but the problem is these tanks that I have to buy and carry around while I have a huge, massive propane tank built into the van. It's such a waste of space here, taking up a quarter of my trunk to carry around this barbecue and these tanks. One thing that I don't use on this van, and I'm sure a lot of you don't as well, is the water heater. Now here you can see this is not a storage compartment. So this 1 by 1 foot space that the water heater fits into will not accommodate the barbecue that I currently have. It just won't fit. So to Facebook Marketplace, where I found this. This beauty right here is the one that I've selected. Now it's 11 inches wide, which gives us enough room to install this. It's 24 inches from the end of the distributor stem here right to the opposite end. So that's going to be a little bit tight. We might have to make some mods to make that fit, but it's a perfect little barbecue. I don't like to cook in the actual van because that's just going to stink it up, make grease. Even with the fan above the stove, it's not a good idea to cook in your van. So this barbecue is going to go on a set of sliders, drawer sliders, heavy duty ones, so that this can easily slide in and out of the van on those tracks, then be stored away and not take up my trunk space. Our first step is going to be to remove this rod that will drain the tank, and then we'll remove this cover here carefully because we're going to reuse it, and then we'll pull the whole system out. We're going to end up cutting the water heater out of this outer frame, but maintaining this. This will act as a water barrier as well as keeping that original look on the outside of the Roadtrek. So the approach we're taking today is we're locking a pair of vice grips onto the rod there, and I'm going to use a pair of channel lockers to grab the vice grips, and we'll see if this works. I can't find a socket that will fit on that massive bolt. Here we go. Ooh, not good. Oh, not good. Oh, really not good. Oh, this is not going to work. Okay, so now we got to find a different way to do this. All right, so I ran to the hardware store, bought myself a 1/16 socket. So let's get this plug out, drain the water, and then we can start removing this thing. Here we go. Oh, there could be some pressure built up in there. Go easy. Oh my God. Wow, well, it's doing its job. And there seems to be no water in the water heater. So I guess I bought this tool for nothing. Great. So we're gonna put that right back in where we got it. We're gonna leave it in there a little loose because there won't be any more water going into this water heater. So our next step, we're gonna take these screws out, and then once we get that out, we'll have to undo all the screws that are holding the whole assembly in, and hopefully we'll be able to get the whole thing out. But first, let's get inside, let's take care of the water caps, and let's take care of that power disconnect. What I'm doing is I bought these guys off Amazon. They're just caps. I'm going to take out the existing hoses that run to and from the water heater, and I'm going to cap them at the pipes there. Once we're done this, we'll get rid of these pipes here, and we'll start taking apart the power. I'm really not sure how that's going to work out, but we'll take that step by step. And then after that, we'll start removal in the front and try to get this whole thing out of here. Alrighty, so we're going to come in here with our channel locks. We're going to grab this guy and take this off first, and then we'll be able to rotate that 90-degree elbow on there. Let's see. No water. Beautiful. Okay, here we go. And we got that guy out. This nut, you don't need any Teflon tape or anything. It's a compression fitting on the inside. I'm going to put that guy on there, and we're going to tighten that up a bit. And then next, we're going to disconnect the cold water inlet here and replace this guy with the same nut. We'll cap this guy off. Being sure to tighten that nice and snug, but again, not stripping, just snug. Over tightening one of these guys can make for a very bad day. Listen for the squeak, and then you know you're pretty much there. There we go. All right. So now the water is disconnected fully from the water heater to the system. We're going to take off these guys here and examine this electrical system. Now, of course, before doing any electrical work, we're going to come down here and we are going to shut off our power from everything. So isolating the battery from the entire system and disconnecting the batteries from the van itself. Make sure you don't get electrocuted, people. Safety first. And now we're going to disconnect all the electrical components. We gotta figure all this out here. Jeez Louise. So after cutting off all the straps, this is what we're left with here. We got black, yellow, and blue coming in from the van. I'm gonna cut these guys off and tape up these ends, and then this whole unit here should be free to go. Oh, except for that, don't forget about that ground wire there. So this framing is held in by these two screws here, and this one up here as well. And then this frame should come off. I don't want to come in here with a screwdriver or any thin metal tools because I know it's really going to scratch up this paint. But let's see if we can get in behind there once we loosen up all these screws. So I found this little hammer. I'm going to try hooking this guy on the inside of that frame. And just, there we go, gently pulling on it. Trying not to bend it too much. And just a little at a time in each corner. However you can get in there, if you can get in there. Oh man, now this is all coming out anyway, so what we can do here. Well, yeah, or maybe I can just, we're just gonna take this guy apart one piece at a time. Alrighty. That whole piece comes out. And that's going to take out this whole fin that's in our way. We're just taking our hammer here, getting it on the inside edge, and we're just going to give it some tugs here. As we're pulling with the hammer, you can see that it is coming off. So you just want to keep at it gently, corner at a time. Oh, there we go. We're going to take this outer frame out completely, gently. Gentile, easy baby. So the tops come out fairly well, but this bottom part here we're going to have to be patient with and slowly bring it out. Oh, beautiful. Look at that. Came out completely. And look at that screw. Oh my goodness. Okay. What we want to do next is we're going to have to disconnect the propane after cleaning up all this caulking and stuff they have in there. We've already disconnected the electrical and the plumbing. Now we got to disconnect the gas and physically disconnect it from the van. Let's get this cleaned up. Cleaning up the butyl tape seems to be fairly easy, just slowly peeling it off the metal here, a little at a time. The butyl tape's still soft enough to peel off, but you can feel certain edges have hardened from exposure. Okay, oh, and they put this stuff on pretty thick. Oh wow, yeah, look at that. That's got to be about 5 layers of butyl tape on there. So what we're going to do next is take an X-Acto knife and try to clean up all this caulking out of this area so that we can get this nut undone and get this propane disconnected. Now we're going to come in with our X-Acto knife, being careful here not to cut ourselves, but we need to cut away all of this caulking so that we'll be able to put the propane pipe through this metal fascia for when we pull out the water heater. Remember, if you keep 2 hands on the knife, there's no hand out to get cut. Now I'm going to go in with a set of needle nose pliers and try to grab the chunks of silicone and pull them out. Once you start doing this, you're going to see that it's going to expose this rubber ring that's in there. So a chunk at a time, we're going to just pull, there it is, the silicone out. And eventually you're going to get this rubber washer that'll come out with it. We're going to keep this. We might need that guy for reinstallation. Now these needle nose pliers work really well to get that caulking out. Highly recommend that. Now that we have that propane connection opened up where we can see everything, we can come in here with a wrench, undo this bolt, releasing it from the water heater itself. And then underneath here we have 2 Robertson screws at the top that we're going to have to undo, and along the sides here. Once we get those out, the water heater should come out fully and it'll release through here, allowing that propane pipe to fall back in and stay in the van. Now I'm just going to take an adjustable wrench, get it in underneath that nut. There we go. And then we can disconnect the propane from the water heater. I am not a propane specialist. You can bring this into a propane shop and they can do this part for you, as well as hooking up a new quick connect that you're going to use to power the barbecue. Now that we've removed all the Robertson screws along the inside perimeter, let's give this a tug and see if it moves here. There it is. So the water heater is released. The only spot that we have contact here is right on the gas line. So you got to be careful when you're pulling this out that you're pushing that gas line over to allow it through that hole. When you're trying to keep this pipe out of the way, be very careful how you handle it. You don't want to put any tools on the inside. You don't want to wreck the threads or scratch it or dent it. I'm going to use the back rubber end of this hammer to give that a little push over. And hopefully that'll allow us to pull the water heater out. Oh, there we go. Let's take a look on the inside here. So to release that propane pipe, I came in on the inside, wiggled it around, and I was able to get that fitting out of the way. We should be able to slide the water heater right out. A little at a time. Oh, there we go. Beautiful. Oh, yeah. Okay. And once we get the water heater out of the van, we're left with this cavity here. Up here, we're going to be reusing this gas line, putting a quick disconnect or a shut-off valve and a screw-on nozzle at the end here, and that'll be incorporated in the housing we're going to reinstall around the perimeter here. All right, let's get this area cleaned up, vacuumed, and get rid of this little piece of wood that's glued down on the floor. Sweet. All right, let's vacuum that out. Then I'm going to take my little razor here. There we go. So that looks great in there. But before we can get into all this, we got to get back into the garage and we got to disassemble and repurpose that water heater. There's a few parts that we're going to need to keep to install the barbecue and the sliders, namely this front face here. We want to remove all the parts we can from here, remove this frame entirely. Then we're going to take a cutting disc and cut out a hole through this so that the barbecue can slide in and out. But we want to retain this whole frame so that we can leave it in there and leave a floor an inch or so high. So if any water enters through the door, it's not going to get into the van. It'll just come down to the bottom and come back out. So now we're going to take off these pipes, this feeder up here, everything we can so we could remove this as cleanly as possible. So first thing I'm going to remove is the nut and bolt on the bottom of this pipe. Then by removing that nut, you lift it up and the entire assembly will come out. Minus that wire. Piece of cake. So after you remove these two screws here, the wiring harness will be released in the back. And there we go, that comes off. Watch your hands and knuckles around these metal edges. You're just a slip away from a bad cut. Oh, that's pretty tight. And we're looking to just twist this guy right off. All right, so we got that guy out of there. Cool. When you look inside here, it's got these little catching flaps that are catching on the edge of this guy. Got to get in there with a flathead screwdriver and pry a few of those guys up. Yeah, you just want to pry up. There we go. That released the retention clip that goes all the way around there. You just want to pry that out. And make sure, there we go. There, nice and fully released now. There's another retention clip around the base where the rod was seated. After you get it in there a bit, pry it up. Whoa, you guys okay? Popped right out of there. Wow, that was quick. And boom, amazing. We got the whole thing in one piece. Oh, that's awesome. Really glad that worked out. So after taking some measurements of the barbecue that we're going to install, I've made my final marks of where I'm going to cut with the cutting disc. Going to get this section all cut out, and then we're going to do some refinements as we go. Okay, that was not the straightest line I've ever cut, but cool. All right, so after doing all that grinding and cutting, we're left with this. Now the edges are really rough, a little uneven, a little sketchy. There's quite a bit of rust on the inside of the base here from all the water being dumped out so many times. And we're going to use this guy to clean up all these rusty areas and get them all cleaned up with the sandpaper. Then we're going to come back in with the grinder, and we're going to use this grinding blade here to clean up all the side edges, get all the burrs off, and try to neaten it up a little bit. Then I'm going to hit it with a little carb cleaner and then wipe it down. Better. So if you ever have these foil type stickers stuck anywhere on your van, you're trying to get them off and they've been on there for like 30 years, take a torch, heat the metal up on the opposite side of the sticker. It's going to reactivate that ancient glue and you'll be able to peel it right off. And if it feels a little stuck, heat it up while you're peeling it off. Oh, much easier. Once that glue gets hot, it reliquefies no matter how old it is and allows the sticker to come right off. Just like that. Now that we got the metal all cleaned up, pretty much ready for paint, we got to patch up a few of these holes here. Being sure not to patch this hole or this hole or this one at the top. That's where the screws go to hold on that face plate that holds the door on the side of the van. But this guy and this guy, I think we're going to use this here, this epoxy steel stick, and we're just going to make a couple patches. And take a pretty big chunk, I'll make 2 patches out of that. It's made up of 2 compounds, you just mix it in your fingers. Should set in about 20 minutes. Alrighty, once we got it to a nice dark consistency, we're just going to take it and push it into those holes. Try to get a thick patch and remove any excess in there. So I got those holes filled up fairly easily, and while I was at it I thought I'd fill in that concavity at the bottom in the center there, but I thought it'd be nice to have this one filled in just in case we get water buildup in here. It's not going to backflow into the van. So after the finishing before the paint job, this is what we're looking at. This is what we're dealing with. We got our gas coming in on the side. That's going to have to be back set quite a bit so we can get our valve quick release put in right over here. I'm just shopping now to find the right set of sliders, but once we get those tracks in line, it should be a pretty smooth install from there. Now that all that epoxy's all dried up and hardened, we're ready to paint. Cleaned all the area, give it a quick sanding. Now you're going to want to keep this off the ground when you're painting on it, so I chose to use an old printer. Pissed me off once. Are you still jammed, you little... You're not the boss of me! And we're going to give that a nice coat of black, probably 4 or 5 coats, and we're going to put a glossy black on this one. That's going to help us after in case we get any grease or stains. Really easy to wipe up and clean. Now we're just going to use some trim-clad glossy black, give her a couple coats. So we're going to be using the original door from the water heater. We're going to remove this bug protector and we're going to have to make some modifications. This one originally you would just open it up, it would lean out, and then you can just take it out of the frame. What we're going to do is we're going to cut some notches into these guys here, and that's going to allow this guy to open downward. We're going to make it so it hinges and opens down. We'll rivet on a couple hinges right after I find which ones I'm going to use. Purchased some parts to upgrade the door here. Got some new 1.5-inch hinges. I also got a new latching mechanism, came in a pack of 2 off Amazon, and that's going to replace my once cool but now rusting nickel that I carved out to act as a door holder. There are these guide pins. What we're going to do with the actual lid is we're going to grind away and make that a full opening. That way when it's sitting in place, we're easily going to be able to pivot this and hinge it out. So we're going to replace that guy with the factory recommended ones, get these hinges on, and then we're going to paint the hinges to match the door, which is in this flat white Rust-Oleum high heat paint. Alrighty, so we're going to start by replacing this holding clip here. You got to take this nickel out of there. Or not. So we're going to remove this nickel and the spring mechanism will come right out, and now we can put in our new ones. So we're going to install this guy from the back here, squeezing them together to make it fit. Or maybe I got to drill this out because this doesn't fit. What the heck? There we go, no problem. So now we're going to take our handle, relock it onto this front here, and there we go. Test to make sure it fits through the door. Perfect. Just like factory. Nice. So after using some super clean to clean out the area here, it's looking really clean, really smooth. I'm thinking this is going to look a lot better if it was all black, flat black, just so when you're pulling out that stainless steel barbecue, the contrast, the shine, it'll just look cool. So our next step is going to be we got to drill a couple 1/2-inch recessed holes here and here, and that's just going to give that extra 1/2 inch for the slider to go in, and then for the regulator on the barbecue, it's just going to fit. I just got to you know, steal a 1/2 inch. Here you can see where the old hole is for the speaker and for the CO2 detector. So it's about a 1/2 inch. I know I'm going to get poke holes through the other side by using the wood bit to route her in there, but I'm going to fill it with some gray silicone in the trunk in the back there. And with the location of those holes, they're never really going to be seen anyway. So we'll get this all painted black after we drill out these holes, and then we're going to be ready to start gluing and screwing in our supports. Alright, so here we go with the flat black trim clad rust paint. Give the paint a little stir with the brush in there. Oh my god, this stuff is old. It's fine. Still good. Oh, for sure. Let's see. Oh, she goes on thick. Perfect. The smell is strong in this one. Now I'm making sure not to paint the gas line. You never want to paint the gas line. You never want to mistake that for a cable cord or anything but a gas line. I think I've gotten just about everything I can from this angle. I have to go inside to get those back areas there. And so after one coat, that's what we're working with. Looks pretty cool. I love it. I think once that stainless steel barbecue comes sliding out of there, it's gonna look awesome. And while I got the paint out, I might as well paint all the wood I'm gonna use for the framing to support the 2 tracks. Get it done in one of those snaps. Just like that. We're going to cut out the inner circle of these holes that act as guides for the guide pins, and that's going to allow it to freely fold in and out. Now that those slots are cut out, the door still fits perfectly on the pins, but now we can pivot it and open it right up. That's going to work out great. So now we're going to be marking where we're going to place our hinges. When we actually mount them, we're going to want to mount them this way with the hinge facing out. Why this is because when you have your hinge, one way it fully closes, the other it gets stuck. And if we have it opening this way, when that door gets jammed in that position, it's not going to allow the tracks to flow. So when we measure where we're going to put the hinges, we're putting the hinges in the slot here. They fit perfectly, and I'm pushing the hinges down towards the frame. I'm going to equally space them about 1/4 of an inch off from each one of these guide pins. Now before we put these hinges in or mark any holes, we want to make sure the door is seated as far down as possible. The hinges are seated down as far as possible with the hinge in the actual groove there. And we just want to double check our spacing with those guide pins. Now I'm just going to take a Sharpie and making sure it's right where I want it, start marking my holes. And when you mark your holes, make sure you're marking the whole hole. You don't want to just put a dot and try to center it. Now that we have all of our holes marked, I'm going to take these hinges off. I'm going to give them a really light scuffing and sanding because I'm going to be painting these the same color as the door, which is a flat white. You need to scuff these up or give them a light sanding just so you can break down a bit of that zinc coating so you get better adhesion with your spray paint. You're going to want to make sure you take special care when you're doing the outside of the hinge here. This is the part that will be facing out, and when you're painting it, be sure to have it in full flex mode to get full coverage of the hinge. Now I'm going to clean these guys up with a little paint thinner and give them a few coats of paint. Now while that paint's drying, I'm going to use my 3/16 drill bit to drill some holes for my 3/16 short rivets. Now before you drill your holes into any metal, you want to use a punch to give a little indentation that's going to help guide your drill bit nice and straight where you want it to go. If you don't have a punch, you can just use a screw or a nail, placing it right in the center of your mark and just giving it a little tap. Now by making those indentations, it's going to make your drilling so much easier. Very easy to guide the bit to where it's got to go, and it just wants to sit there. When you're drilling through metal, you could also spray a little lubricant on there to help ease the friction on the drill bit. Make sure whatever you're drilling is securely fastened down if you're going to put pressure on it. Yeah. So now that we got the hinges set up on the door, the next thing is going to be to replace the screen that used to sit here for ventilation. We want this to be fully covered. So I found this aluminum, Value Village, $2. I'm going to trace this out over top, cut it with the cutting disc, and then we're going to try to make that fit into here and rivet into position. So now that I have the piece traced out, ready to take that cutting disc and give her a chop chop. Alright. And now we're going to take that piece, we're going to place it on a piece of wood and try to tap it nice and straight. I got one side that's got the lip already done, but I got to bend this one here. So I'm going to use a piece of wood, line that up nice and straight edge to edge. And then we're going to slowly but surely tap this guy down. So that's going to slide right up. Oh, that looks good. Underneath, and then this bottom. Not too shabby. Wow, that came out better than I thought. So on this guy here, we're going to place a few rivets across the bottom here, right into the door. And on the back side, we're going to drill a couple holes into these flaps. Use some vice grips to hold them nice and clamped in position, and then we're going to rivet these guys as well. Now I placed this piece of aluminum with the top lip underneath the door and the bottom lip over top of the door. This is so that when it rains, that water is going to sheath down and go right over it. There's nowhere for it to catch and get stuck inside there. I'm also going to put some die core on the side seams. That way we're going to stop any water from penetrating through that joint there. So let's do a little touch-ups on the bottom here, and I think we're about ready to put this in, and then we're going to give the whole door a new paint job. Going to give this a spritz with some oil just to help drill smoothly. I think to do this, we're going to have to drill this first and then put it in to do the holes through the door. This way here we can put a lot more pressure and drill right through that aluminum quite easily. So we're going to get these guys started on here. And if we need to, we can take this out and finish it on the table with a little more force. Keep the wood here like this, and then I'll be able to drill into it much easier. Now that we got one side drilled out, ready to be riveted, I'm realizing this one's going to be impossible. There's nowhere to get the rivet gun into here to tighten up those rivets. So what I'm going to use is some epoxy. This stuff's water weld. This should hold this no problem. I'm going to place it in between the seams here, clamp it down with a few vice grips, and then rivet this guy into position. Afterwards, once that's settled and cured, we're going to come down to the bottom and drill in 4 or 5 different rivets, and we'll put those across here. I think it's going to look really sharp when it's done. So we're going to mix up some of this epoxy putty. We're going to place it on the side that we can't rivet. So we're just going to smear that on the inside edges. Not too much. Just want that to cover the area. Alright, and then we're going to take our leftover putty here. We're going to smear that on the inside of this guy. And once we compress these guys together and use those vice grips to hold it, that's going to make an unbreakable bond. I'm going to save the rest of that putty to fill in the cracks after. And now we're going to take our piece. Beauty, that looks great. And we're going to take our vice grips and then we'll clamp this guy down. There we go. We're going to let that cure for about an hour, and while we're waiting for that to cure, we're going to get those rivets in on the other side as well. Taking a look at the front here, I'm going to use that extra epoxy to fill in this cavity right here. Won't take much. And you want to make sure this stuff is as smooth as possible when you're done. Then I'm going to come in with my razor blade and just scrape that clean. Alrighty, there we go. Now we're ready to rivet the other side here. Now let's see if we can get our riveting gun in here to do this up. This will be interesting. Oh, it looks like it's going to work. Awesome. There it is. And then this guy as well. Got our rivets on one side, Bondo on the other, but I'm also going to fill in this crack here. Try to even that out. And now this should look pretty great when we're done. I just rolled that epoxy into a little string. Keep it a little neater. This other side I just smeared it. Not the best approach. Doing the rolly and then making a nice long string out of that epoxy makes it much easier to get in there. Less waste, less overflow there. And I'm just smearing it up and under that edge. So that when these guys get pushed together, I'll give it a nice little finish. And one more piece right across the bottom there. Might not even have to rivet that bottom seam. Pushing it right into the joint. Alrighty, there we go. I'm gonna let this dry and harden. Then we're gonna come in some light sandpaper to get rid of any imperfections there, and then this door is gonna be ready for paint. I'd like to say I'm surprised how well this worked out, but we'll go with good enough. So after giving a new paint job to the screw heads, I'm gonna put them back in to support in this mounting bracket here. Start with these top guys. Get these sides lined up. And then these final guys here. Beautiful. Now that we got the frame back in place and secured, we can start placing our 2x4 supports in here, get everything lined up. Gonna get that PL 9000 heavy duty construction adhesive and start placing these guys in position. Gonna have to make some final measurements and maybe do a dry fitting of the barbecue to make sure it's gonna fit just right. When fitting the barbecue, you not only have to center it, but you also have to make sure that we're gonna allot ourselves just enough room. We only have about an inch to spare for clearance. And now we're going to set up our propane quick release valve. I've mounted it onto a little L bracket. Use this strap, it's surprisingly solid on there. This is going to get riveted into the existing frame, and we're going to have to put on this adapter with the rounded edge. That's going to go to the coupler on the van, and this side here is going to go into our valve directly. I'm going to put on some tape that came with the kit, get these guys put together tightly, and then we'll put this into the van. And you want to get that nice and snug and tight. After this is all installed, of course, we're going to be going through, spraying some soapy water and everything, make sure all these connections are nice and secure and leak-proof. And here's my disclaimer. Always have a propane specialist inspect and certify your van after any type of renovation like this. Now that I've pre-wrapped the opposite end with the, now that I put the Teflon tape, loud cars, man. Now that I put the Teflon tape on the opposite end, now that I put the Teflon tape and the protective case on the, now that I've put the silicone tape, now that I have the Teflon tape on the threads and the protective cover over the opposite end, I'm ready to rivet this guy into position, and that's going to allow the barbecue to slide in and out. If I was to mount it lower and on the side, we wouldn't have the area for clearance. There it is, solid. Oh wow, nice. Riveted in position. So luckily where we put the adapter, it's right where the water heater input was. We don't have to move the pipe too far. We're going to first hook it up to the adapter, and once that's connected and tightened, we're then going to take some plastic fasteners and fasten this to the side so there's no movement in the pipe while we're driving. Making sure that our pipe is right in line with the adapter. Nice, slow and steady here. And once you get the thread started, it's very smooth and easy here. And now that we're at the end, we're going to take our adjustable. Oh, we're going to take our bigger adjustable. One of the coolest tools I ever bought at a garage sale. Has a nice slide action for tightening. All right, back to tightening here. So you want to support the pipe while you're tightening. Now to test this, we're going to take some soapy water, spray it, and turn on the propane and look for any bubbles anywhere on these joints. Now that we have the retaining frame back in position, it's time to get this cover back on. And to do that, we're going to have to use some butyl tape. The butyl tape has to make up for the difference with the concavity in the frame here. So I'm going to put 2 layers of butyl tape on the cover itself, and then I'm going to fill this area with the butyl tape and then combine the two together so I know I got a good snug fit. So here we have the outer frame facing down, and you can see the butyl tape on the back. You can also see where it's been built up to fill that concavity on the van there. We're going to try to replicate this using some brand new butyl tape. So we're going to remove, well, all the old butyl tape. Comes up pretty easily. We're going to clean this surface area here, and then we're going to put a new layer of butyl tape, maybe 2, over the entire perimeter here, and that's going to match up and pair with the concavity filling we do on the van. So here you can see we have the 1 layer going around. We're going to double that up so it fully covers the entire frame. Then we're going to go out to the van and fill those concavities on the side. And now, using this piece of wood as a guide, we're going to fill the full length of where the frame covers the van here. And once this is filled, we'll be able to put that framing on top, and it's all going to squish together and create a great seal. Now that we have our butyl tape on the van and we filled that concavity on both sides, we're ready to take our frame and insert it. Now when we place this guy in, we want to check for fitting as we do and make sure that this is going to sit in nice and flush, nice and tight. Okay. And just like how when we took this out, it took a lot of pressure to release it, it's going to take a lot of pressure to get this guy to sit nice and flat. So it would appear I put too much. I think if you put 2 layers on the van itself, that's enough. The extra 2 layers I put onto the frame was just too much. So I am shaving off a couple layers here. When you're putting on the butyl tape, make sure your inside seam here is well covered. That other insert is going to go over top about 1.5 inches the whole way around, so make sure there's no obstructions, but you want that seal on the outside enclosed. All right, let's try that. Let's see how this fits. Better. Much better on the top. And closer to what we need on the bottom there. Gonna cut off all that excess that's sticking out on the side. Try not to scratch the van. And that'll give you a clean outer edge there. Fill in any little pockets you see that need a little extra. Then afterwards you can go around and clean up all the edges once it's compressed. Okay, and then we're gonna take that big screw from the top and see how much compression we get with that when we tighten it up. All right, let's tighten this up and see what kind of fit we get here. Well, seeing as that is stripped, damn it. Let's try the bottom 2 screws here. Oh, that's good. Oh, that gives a nice tightening. Oh, looks good. Good. And after you compress it, again, trim off whatever excess is on the outside there. And we'll see how this other side tightens up here. Just lightly compressing it in, give it a little push. Make sure it's seated well. We'll tighten it up one more time here. And again, cutting off the excess carefully. Well, today it's raining outside, so we're going to be working inside. We got our barbecue back from the welding shop. They did a great job. We're going to do some touch-up painting, big cleaning. Might even get a buffer out and give a shine back to the barbecue and get it ready to get these sliders put into place. Then we're going to bring it over to the van, dry fit it, hopefully get it installed tomorrow if there's sunshine. Now that we got the barbecue all cleaned up, we're going to flip it over, putting it on this towel so we don't scratch it too much. Slide that back in there. So now we're going to do some touch-up painting on the rails. They got pretty marked and banged and scratched up with the welding installation. Once these guys are done, we're going to clean the bottom of the barbecue, make it look like the top. Then we're going to put the sliders on the sides, and hopefully then we'll be able to dry fit this in the van. So this is what all the rails and welds look like on the before. Pretty rough stuff. And after a quick paint job, this is what we got. It looks pretty sharp. Now let's get this thing dry fitted into the van. So now I've pulled the end of the slider out from the track, lining it up with that bottom rail. Gonna get those holes lined up. Then we're going to use the original hardware that came with these sliders to attach it to the rails here. Then we'll be able to dry fit it, put it into position, and make sure that it's right, square, straight, and level before we nail or screw anything else down. Before I put the barbecue in for the dry fitting, I found some wood in the garage and I made this little mini wall. Gonna install it right about here, right in the border of where this cover goes in. I'm going to screw this guy into the sidewalls to act as a partition wall, and then afterwards we're going to put some double bubble foil wrap and encase the interior of the whole compartment. That way it's going to help block smells and scents, and if there is any oil or grease or anything, it'd be really easy to wipe down and clean. So now we're going to use the PL 9000 construction adhesive, the good stuff, and we're going to be gluing down these pieces of wood down into the sidewall. This one here, the base will get glued down, but this top plate that the slider gets screwed into, we're going to leave it, attach it to the barbecue in the slider, put it in position, and once we know it's exactly where it needs to be, we'll screw this guy down into those glued supports. Yeah, put a generous coating on there. Make sure this doesn't go anywhere. On the sides and on the bottom. And there we go. Push that down hard, make sure she's settled right in there. Excellent. And that's how she's gonna go. Just like that. Alrighty, let's get these side plates glued in, as well as the spacers. That spacer goes in first along that wall. Make sure you shimmy it back and forth so the glue fully adheres in there and flattens out. And then on top of that guy there, we're gonna put this guy right here. Let's double check with the slider first. And now we got the side all glued in, and we got our side mounting pieces here. So we're gonna screw the rail onto these side pieces so they're nice and perfectly straight, and then put it in as one solid unit, and then glue and screw it into position here. Now that we did a dry fitting with the actual barbecue to make sure it's lined up properly, we're good to go to fasten these guys in. We're gonna put some long screws going down and some short screws going to the side and lock this channel right in place. And so after doing the dry fitting, had to drill a little bit more holes. Had to make a bigger space for that propane regulator to fit in there. I'm gonna vacuum this all up, clean it up, and then we're ready to get this guy put into place and permanently glued and screwed down. Almost there, guys, super exciting. So now our left side is fully glued, screwed, fastened, locked in. And our right side, the base is screwed in and locked, but this top piece is not. I've screwed in a couple holes, countersunk them so that I can get the screws with good penetration through the bottom plate. So now we're gonna put the barbecue back in the track so we know exactly where it's supposed to be. And once it's in position, we're gonna have glue on the bottom of this guy, lock it down, and then once the barbecue is in there securely and solid, we know exactly where it's gotta be. We're gonna put the screws in and lock this guy down as well. Final stages. Well, the sun's going down. We better get moving here. So we're gonna put some glue on the bottom of this guy, just where it makes contact with the other wood. So the first 5 inches or so, and the last 10 inches or so here. Now that we got the glue on there, we're gonna put it in position and we're ready to put the barbecue back in. Perfect. We're just gonna set it roughly where we need it. Okay. Now we're gonna get the barbecue and put it back in. There we go. Now we can slide the barbecue all the way in. That's pretty cool. All right, now we can go from the inside and screw down and finalize that right side. Now we can see the barbecue sitting in its new home here. We got lots of room for that regulator to fit up against that wall. Now we're gonna go to the right side and we're gonna screw in this board now that we know that the tracks are sliding nice and effortlessly. There's no resistance and they're lined up perfect. And we're gonna come in and fasten the rear down first. Locked down. Amazing. We're going to test the barbecue slide one more time, and once we're really positive that it's sliding perfectly, then we're going to lock down the front area of the right side. All right, let's see how this guy slides. First time coming out. Amazing. Oh my God, that looks so cool. That is awesome. Wow. Really excited that this worked. This is amazing. All right, let's see how she slides in. It's got the locks on the front that you got to release. And then we're just going to slide it in. And it locks. Oh my God. That is awesome. That is just awesome. All right, let's get that side screw down, and we just got finishing touches. And here we can see the track system, the propane line well out of the way of anything. We just got these final 3 screws and our track system is pretty much complete. Now the left side is glued on the base, screwed in from the top, and the bottom is glued right to this steel floor. Once this cures, it's not going to move an inch. Super excited to finish up all the little touches and get this done. What we got to do next is we're going to put this wall in, screwed into position. Then we're going to take that double bubble foil wrap and wrap it around the wall here, create a ceiling, and then bring it down this wall. I'm going to put a strip as well right down the middle here, just in case the barbecue ever leaks any oil or grease. It'll be easy to wipe up on that double bubble foil wrap. Yeah, say that 5 times fast. Now I'm going to leave the barbecue inside, locked in position for the night, and that's going to take about 24 hours for that construction adhesive to fully cure. And then by morning, we know this is going to be ready to go. But before then, I really want to test out the door and see how it fits. All right, let's see how this fits. Perfect. Now that we got it all assembled in there, I'll be able to take some rivets, rivet these hinges onto the door. Just didn't want it to be in the way when I was putting in the barbecue itself, but man, this is awesome. Here's the barbecue in her new home. Comfy and cozy and secure. Looks awesome. Now that we got the barbecue and the sliders installed, this looks amazing. I'm super happy with that. What we got to do now is we're going to insulate this entire area using double bubble foil wrap. We're going to enclose all of this. We're going to try to make it as airtight as possible just to lock in any smells or scents that's going to come from the barbecue. Don't want that seeping in underneath the cab or into the trunk. And once we get this fully enclosed, we'll be ready to put these panels back on. So we got the left wall done here, we got the back wall done. I'm leaving a flap so it'll overlap and I'll be able to tape it from underneath, from inside later. We're gonna get it in behind that propane pipe, screwing it down on that far wall, and that'll give us our outer enclosure. I'm also gonna build a flap out of the same material that's gonna close when we're barbecuing, and that's just gonna stop any fumes or smoke from coming into the van. And the last piece that I'm gonna put on is gonna be a cut piece. Probably gonna Velcro it down to this floor. That way, if it ever gets greasy or dirty, I could just lift it, take it out, clean it, and then place it back in. Now I've done the bubble test on this joint for the propane connection several times, nothing. No bubbles, no risks of leak or anything. But just in case, I'm gonna make a cone out of this double bubble foil wrap that I'm gonna wrap at the base of this pipe and bring it forward. That way, if there ever was a leak with that propane, it would be vented out and not build up in the cabin here, ready to, explode. So starting well before the junction of the propane fitting, and we're going to bring that straight to the outside where there is a vent in the door, so if there ever was a leak, it would vent out. So I cut out this guy here, that general shape. I've also cut a little notch into it. So what we're going to do is bring that notch right where that is riveted into the frame. This guy comes around, leaves enough room for that on-off lever for the valve, wraps up and in. So I'm going to tape all this from the inside, do this seam, make it nice and tight along the pipe. We have our gas fitting enclosure all done and taped up. Now we're just going to come inside here, finish this guy up, get this flap over, get this guy brought over, fully enclosed, tape it sealed, and then we're ready to put the barbecue in, get the door riveted in. And the last thing we have to do is get a custom made hose to attach our barbecue to our quick release outlet. Just finishing up the interior of this thing, and it looks like something from SpaceX. Yeah, if SpaceX had a lunchbox, yeah, that's what it would look like. We got insulation on the inside of the door. I've made this insulative pad that can be put over top of that. And inside of the van, she is locked down and sealed on all sides. Ready to put this all back together, get my bed back in here. We need to bring the van to a propane shop. We're gonna get them to make us a nice custom hose that's gonna go right from the quick release straight to the barbecue. Then when it's in storage, I just have to unplug it from here and fold it back in. Really coming together. Can't wait to get these last few details done. Now that we have the door riveted into the hinges, we're able to use the door properly as it should be, and we're also able to retract out the barbecue. I've placed this double bubble foam wrap inside the barbecue here, and that's just going to stop it from rattling around. And here we have the parts to hook up to the quick disconnect. Yeah, more to come on that shortly. So I went to my local propane shop, showed him what I've done, and he was impressed. He thought it was a super cool idea. And then he told me that this is not going to work. So the problem is the furnace, the fridge, the stove, everything is hooked up to the tank on a regulator, and it's a low pressure regulator. And what you need for a barbecue like this is high pressure, the kind of pressure you would get out of a standard 1 pound or 10 pound tank. So long story short, we're not going to be able to fuel the barbecue with the existing hose. Now the quick disconnect that I installed here, it has a shut-off valve on it which will just remain off, and the option that we're going to have to take is this. We're going to keep this hose that I bought off Amazon, which is basically just an extender for a 1 pound tank. We're going to hook the tank up to the barbecue with this hose and then just leave the tank sitting on the ground while using, and then this conveniently stores underneath the barbecue when we retract it back in. We're going to have to store our tanks in the trunk, but luckily I could fit 2 of these guys conveniently right in this corner after doing the renovations on the trunk, installing the laminate flooring, installing the LED lighting, and moving the jack system that used to be bolted onto this back wall here. This is much more manageable. Now that we've connected the hose to the regulator, we can place the tank on the ground beneath it. Now this isn't optimal, this isn't exactly how I wanted it to work out, but this does work. And if I wanted to, I could put a splitter on the tank if there's room and run a direct line underneath the van to this barbecue, but this is gonna work just fine. Now once the tank's connected, we can turn our gas on here, take our lighter, put it in our ignition hole, and the barbecue lights right up. I removed the grill and the heat shield just so you can see how this guy lights up. Turning our gas on, igniting, and there we go. And there you have it. Installed retractable barbecue for your Roadtrek 190. Now it didn't work out exactly as I'd hoped, but I'm really happy the way the whole thing worked out. If this is something you're looking to do, I hope this acts as a good guide and motivation for you. You can do this one step at a time. You can achieve anything, guys. Help me reach 1,000 subscribers by 2025. Click the button below. I really appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one.